Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to Ward Radio. I'm your host, Cardin Ellis. Today, I'm joined in the studio by a superstar archaeological, better than Indiana Jones and Tomb Raider co-host group. Oh, I botched this intro. Josh Gailey, author of Witnessing Miracles, and Jerry Grover, translator of the Characters document, who are here to tell us how this title is wild, how volcanic ash guided the Jaredites through the Atlantic. Now, the one thing the Heartlanders have me on, my man, the one thing the Heartlanders have me on, that I mispronounced that horribly. The one thing the Heartlanders have me on, guys, okay, is how the Jaredites got to the New World. Okay, I saw the History Channel episode. I saw all of the data on crossing the Pacific versus the Atlantic, coming around Cape Horn into the area on Florida. And that's done in 32 days. Whereas the way on that little floppy card that we got in seminary takes like 500 some odd days. They got me on how Lehi and Nephi and the Jaredites could have come to the New World. But you're suggesting that volcanic ash, if I read this correctly, volcanic ash guided the Jaredites through the Atlantic. So you've got what you say is a superior theory. Am I reading you right there, Jerry? Is that what's going on?
Well, you can sing Kumbaya with the Heartlanders all the way till past Florida. Then it's different.
Brutal, man.
Yeah, because we don't differ with, at least I don't, on the path, Atlantic path. That that's what they propose as well. We one of the topics that has kind of intrigued a lot of people that are interested in the Book of Mormon is the Jaredites, where they came from and how they got to the New World. So we're going to talk about that tonight. And basically there are two proposals, one going through the Pacific, the other coming through the Atlantic. My proposal, I'm not the only one making this proposal, but the Atlantic crossing seems the most feasible to me. I'm also looking at other factors that other people haven't looked at, like the potential for volcanic eruptions to maybe be assisting and guiding them. Also, some of the meanings based on Sumerian of a few of the place names. So from there, we can kind of get into the discussion if you want to flip up, get my PowerPoint right active here.
Boom, there it is. Mediterranean Atlantic Journey of the Jaredites. All right, super PowerPointy. I dig it.
And I think for Mesoamerica, a lot of people early on, because John Sorensen wrote in his first book that he thought that they came across the Pacific, and he did a basic because in the Book of Ether it talks about 344 days for them to get here, and he compared that to the Pacific Current, and the time it would take to get from Asia to Central America was roughly in that 350-day time frame. And so John Sorensen's work was preliminary on that. I think what a lot of people don't know is he actually changed his opinion over time and switched towards a more Atlantic crossing, and that's where a lot of the data is now.
So John Sorensen was one of the original Heartlanders?
No, he's one of the original Mesoamericanists, kind of the father of a Mesoamerican model. But
who is secretly Heartlander? All right, keep going, dog. Keep going, man. So hit us. How did they get here, bro? How'd they get here?
Okay, well, kind of, and I don't think this is that controversial, but maybe virtually everybody thinks that they probably originated from the Sumer, the area of Sumer, the ancient civilization of Sumer. You can see the Persian Gulf there on the diagram. So
okay.
It's kind of all those cities going up the valley there. Some of the clues is we have the name Kish, which actually is also a biblical name, but is actually a major city in Sumer. You also have the tower, even though it doesn't call it the Tower of Babel, which is interesting in and of itself because Babel was added to the Bible, so you wouldn't have expected them to refer to it as a Tower of Babel. But that does match the ziggurats that were pyramids that were in that area.
I like your New York accent. Yeah, not the ziggurats. It's the ziggurats. Yeah, we're going to go check out some ziggurats down there, and then we're going to get some pasta.
Sounds like something you smoke after a meal.
Yeah, seriously. All right, keep going.
Yeah, I've never smoked a ziggurat, but I hear they're good. So,
okay.
And so kind of, we're starting from there. Then the question was, where did they go? Ether talks about them coming down probably into the valley there, going north. And my contention is that whenever you're talking about being led in a cloud, or that also in the Book of Mormon, you have instances where volcanic eruptions and the Lord speaks out of a cloud, as in the third Nephi event. So I'm just saying, okay, that was an understood kind of concept. Also Sinai, some scientists have proposed that it's actually a volcano. So the Lord, again, spoke from a cloud there. So they went northward up the valley, and he promised to go before the group in some form or fashion, leading them in a pillar of a cloud or pillar of fire was how the Israelites were led. So it's a similar type of typology, if you will.
Okay.
And then we can discuss that. The next slide, you can block this out. This is just kind of a discussion. But so we've got them going northward, and we've got a little map here. But basically, they went to the Valley of Nimrod, which is actually a biblical, I mean, it's a known biblical name.
Whoa, okay, that's cool. That's cool.
But then the question is, okay, the brother of Jared was also talked to the Lord in a cloud there. There is an active volcano up there, and there's actually kind of a history in that area of legends that was the location of Nimrod. So that seems to be a reasonable place where they would have gone as they passed northward.
Okay.
Now, the people that think they went the Pacific, they actually have probably this leg is similar, but then they have them going the other direction, right? Going across Asia or something. Over the
rock
Pacific.
on. Okay.
Right. But then we have them crossing there's kind of different legs of the journey. So that would be the first journey. The second leg is where they cross the empty quarter.
Okay.
Where no man had been, basically, is what it says.
So are we talking about the same empty quarter that is the empty quarter that Jim Gee explored and that Nephi had to have survived? It was called the empty quarter in Arabia. It was, one of the last mapped places on Earth. We talked about in another episode.
He's further to the south. I think this is the Syrian desert is what I'm proposing he crossed. So
okay,
yeah,
cool.
So it's not the same place that Lehi would have traveled to get from Nahum to Bountiful.
Yeah, that's what I was asking
that's a
for.
very inhospitable desert that's being described in the Book of Mormon. This is not, the Book of Ether's not describing the same location.
Okay, not the same spot. Okay, cool. Keep going.
Okay. And so basically you have, they have to get to a place where they build barges, right? So after the second leg takes them to a place where they build the barges.
Okay.
Initially, there's two building of barges that goes on, building of ships, I guess, in the second instance. So the proposal is simply that the many waters that they crossed with these barges, because it said they did cross many waters, is the Mediterranean Sea. Okay. On this leg of the journey, they had, bees, and they mentioned bees. The leg out into the open water in the ocean, that doesn't talk about them carrying the bees with them or anything. So, but this is the section where they have the bees and other things on the barges.
Okay.
Then it mentions in Ether 2, it says that the Lord would not suffer them that they should stop beyond the sea in the wilderness. So they stopped beyond a sea in a wilderness before they made the major crossing. And so kind of what does that mean? And I kind of propose that essentially you're looking at the Canary Islands as the place that they stopped.
Interesting. Okay.
And that would be where the brother of Jared went up onto the mount. All those things happened. And I mentioned Tenerife. That's, again, another volcano that exists in the Canary Islands.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that wrong button. I just want to make sure that I'm totally wrapping my head around this correctly. You're saying that the Jaredites came from ancient Sumeria, you believe? Okay, not Phoenicia, like I believe has been suggested before.
That would be the Mulek. That's the people of Mulek. So the time frame we're talking about is like 2500 BC when the Jaredites came.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. I guess I got those confused. I apologize.
Yeah.
So you're saying that they came from the Valley of Nimrod, crossed the empty quarter. That's the kind of like, not the land of desolation, but that's the desolate land that was described in the Book of Mormon. And then they made it through many waters, but stopped at a sea, kind of like within a sea, just like an Inception. It's like a dream within a dream, shall we say? Okay. And you think that was Tenerife and this was the volcano? Or you think this was Mount Shellam? Where or was it Mount Shellam? Yes, Mount Shellam, where the brother of Jared had to climb to the top, make the stones. The stones were touched by the finger of the Lord, and they glowed. I don't know what that word is.
Yeah, again, it's in a cloud kind of thing. I mean, the same concept of. But and at that time, the Tenerife, the volcano it did erupt during that time frame. So again, the proposal is that they had these. We call them low-grade barges, whatever we want to call them. They really weren't capable of crossing a major ocean. They could jog along the Mediterranean fine. They could get out to the Canary Islands fine. And they had to be in a position where they could cross the ocean with, we don't know how, high-tech the ship was, but they obviously had to have favorable current and favorable winds, probably, because it talks about them being driven before the winds, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but the Canary Islands seem to satisfy, and the wilderness beyond the sea. Again, there's not a lot of explanation or details in the book. So
yeah, we get like 2 to 3 chapters. By the time we're in chapter 3, the brother of Jared's already up. And the finger of the Lord's coming down, right? So like we wish we had more. I wish there was way more detail. Like when we get to Nephi's journey, we're going, he's given the directions and the number of days traveled. And so everybody's map looks the same,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
But when we talk about the Ether journey, everybody's map's going to look a little different because there's not enough to go on to make it concrete. It's just a fun adventure in studying the text and trying to apply it. I think one of the amazing things is the strength of argument from the start. Like with ancient Sumer, like if you go to the Book of Mormon, we have a king called Kish, you have a gentleman named Achish, you have Kishkumen later in the Book of Mormon. So when we go to the archaeological site in ancient Sumer of Kish, that was a ruling dynastic kingdom that was controlling the area for like hundreds of years, dating to the right time period. So I think from a starting point, the strength of argument's really strong. And then, because it's Jerry Grover, we're going to end up at a volcano, right, Jerry? That's one of the rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you'll see there are more volcanoes to come.
Yeah.
I mean, you've only seen the first one.
That's right.
Yeah, but again, it's trying to apply this concept that says the Lord was continuously before them. The cloud was continuous. It was some sort of, he was helping them navigate, right, with some cloud. I guess you could say, well, there was a stratocumulus cloud that just went all the way around the earth and they followed it. But I'm looking at it saying, okay, and this is also, I'm not saying it's a myth. It's not a myth, but there are some kind of larger than life elements perhaps to this story that we find in the Book of Ether. So,
well, and also what's stopping this from being not a naturalistic thing and not we're trying to connect the dots here post hoc? Why couldn't this just be miraculous? For example, like Moses seeing the burning bush. There was a bush that was on fire, but the bush wasn't consumed, therefore it was just miraculous. Could not the cloud have just been miraculous, just like the pillar of fire that led the children of Israel in the Exodus? Or are we just trying to find an explanation for something miraculous where it can't fit?
The answer is no. It's impossible. It could have been that.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome.
No, I mean, that's why I'm here, right? Actually, I'm a scientist, so we're looking at this from, recognizing not everything in the scripture can be boiled down to science and everything, but it's saying, okay, maybe there's something going on here that does have a naturalistic explanation in conjunction. It's not that it wasn't miraculous. It wasn't that things
or be an
happen.
Interesting way that God's working by natural laws.
Right. So that's kind of my approach. That's really what my research involves primarily, is looking at the Book of Mormon linguistically and scientifically. The same thing is applied here, I guess, and looking at this saying, okay, there may be something going on here that does have a natural explanation. It's not that it wasn't miraculous. It wasn't that they, even the crossing of the ocean, obviously the building of the ship, there are a lot of other miraculous elements here that would require God's intervention.
So what you're saying is we've been praying wrong this whole time. Next time I sit down and I'm on my knees, I shouldn't just pray for guidance. I should pray for a volcano, eruption.
Please.
You know what I'm saying? For an utter volcanic eruption. I want magma. I want just I want Mount St. Helens
the real question is, where are we blowing up? That's the real question, Cardin.
Okay,
do you have any choices in mind?
Okay, little side note here, but you're going to love this one, Jerry. You're going to love this one, Jerry. I had, not an investigator, but there was a member of one of my wards, a super strong member, had been one of the first converts in Argentina like 30 years ago or something like that. One of those beautiful like pioneer stories in their country, right? And literally, this guy received the Book of Mormon, was told by the missionaries to take Moroni's promise. He gets down on his hands and knees and he actually prays about it. And they told him, okay, sit there and just wait and just let the Spirit speak, right? So he sits down and he prays and he says, God, I don't know how to say this other than send me a sign. At which point, his entire house shakes and the window is like practically blown open. It cracks and the loudest explosion he's ever heard in his life happens.
Awesome.
And that was the day that a famous shipyard accident in Argentina happened. And there was this oil tanker that exploded. And so literally it exploded like 2 miles from his house and sent a shockwave out big enough that like it broke his window. It like cracked his window right at the moment that he was praying about if the Book of Mormon was true or not. And it's like that Beirut explosion that you saw in Lebanon where there was like the fertilizer in that ship and then just a shock wave and then a mushroom cloud goes out.
Divine multitasking.
Yes, the divine multitasking. Exactly.
So now you're getting me.
Yeah, exactly. So it was, I believe, dude, if a ship can blow out and give us a convert, I believe that a volcano can erupt and just guide the Jaredites to the promised land, baby. Keep going, man.
Well, I had a similar experience. We were in a church in Spanish Fork and they were giving somebody the Holy Ghost and then the explosive plant blew up on the side of the mountain and blew the window out of the church. Everyone said, whoa.
Right at the amen of the prayer.
That guy's going to be a prophet, brother. Man.
Dude, that's funny. All right, so hit it. Keep going, man. Keep going.
Okay. Well, and one thing about the Canary Islands, I mentioned, I kind of have a book and propose that a lot of the Jaredite names, or most all of them, can be explained by looking at Sumerian etymological roots to these names. And you have Moriancumer, that's mentioned. The Sumerians didn't really have a word for islands. So basically you can construct Moriancumer from ship, laid down, wooden object, placed, wood, water, land of pile of earth. So it's like, I can actually see maybe in the names that they're talking about an island of some sort. We talked about guided by the cloud. The third leg of the journey, which we talked about, or haven't talked about, was, if you can see my cursor here, this is the pathway of Columbus, but he actually passed through the Canaries too.
Okay.
And that's where we get to that a wind had to blow, because it talks about a furious wind blowing, right? They're driven before the wind. So you do have to look at kind of climatological things just to determine, how they got there using the wind.
Okay.
The other thing is there's also currents that are favorable.
Okay.
Let's go to the next one, where you have the Canary current that brings them south, and then they come across on the north equatorial current.
Interesting. Okay. The
other thing about the Canaries, there were large trees that are suitable for building ships. That's one thing, as the ships were talked about as being as high as a tree. The trees there are 130 feet high. So that's not a problem. At least that criteria is met. And then the Phoenician, which you talked about, the ship that the ancient ship, I just use that as an example. They had a crew of 15 on the ship, and the length of that ship was 65 feet long. So you can accommodate, again, we don't know exactly how many people were with the Jaredite group, but I basically said if you had 24 families, 5 to a family, they could fit on the 8 barges, the 8 ships that were built.
Okay. All right.
The other thing is there's kind of this, I don't know where it started, probably from some church artist or something, where people look at the Jared and the brother Jared and their families crossing in these submarine type vessels. It doesn't say anything about.
Dude, they were tied like onto a dish, bro. That's the coolest part.
So am I after a workout.
Yeah. And Josh can kind of talk about probably what it's talking about in terms of, what they navigated the Mediterranean with and then what that really means from a.
Yeah, I think of a deep V hull and the rocking of the boat that would be, if you have something, even just a deck on a deep V hull, and then that if you have 2 openings on either side, that rocking is going to create airflow underneath. So I don't picture like an acorn style ship going underneath the waters.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Like seriously, man. That's the best part of the Book of
picture
Ether.
something where you're not going to suffocate and you might actually have space for a bathroom. Like, I apologize.
That's funny. What is a deep V hull? What's that?
Like, just picture something that can actually
you tell me deep V and I'm thinking of a t-shirt, bro.
So again,
what is it? What's a deep V hull? What's that?
Just picture a ship that has, literally like a rib cage around the bottom of it. So it has a deep hull and they call it a deep V hull literally just because of the shape. So it can handle some of the ocean.
Okay, but what's the holes on each side that create airflow? You mean above the waterline is what you're suggesting?
Yeah, picture two ways to get in on the like on the front and the back of the boat. So,
okay, interesting. Okay,
and you're able to get down that way, and you can open that and seal that. Like, so if there's a deck and you have 2 main entrances down underneath the boat, when things get rough, you seal that up, you go underneath, and you're protected, and you open that up when it's nicer out and you can handle it, and even just the gentle rocking in the boat's going to create an airflow underneath.
So it's almost, what you're describing is almost more like what the renditions of Noah's Ark look like, but just on a smaller scale.
Smaller scale.
Well, and they actually mention Noah's Ark, like if you read in Ether, that's, it's not saying that's exactly how they built it, but they refer to it.
Yeah.
So, and the issue of the hole, you can also have an actual hole that's below waterline, but as long as it's sealed all the way up to the top, it could be opened and stopped, and you could throw, refuse down it. That actually meets what the description was, where, they stopped the hole. And so
here's a question. Why, if this is such a good system and a way to get to the New World, going to the Valley of Nimrod and then through the Empty Quarter and then through the Mediterranean until you get to the Canary Islands and taking the super convenient equatorial current from the Canary Islands to the New World, why isn't that the way? And if there was especially trees sufficient for building ships in the Canary Islands, why isn't that the way that Nephi and Lehi took?
Well, it has to do with geography. Number one, they went down to the southern end of the Arabian Peninsula, and it's kind of like, why would they go all the way down there to go all the way around Africa? It's also based on Book of Mormon geography, West Sea and Land of Inheritance being along the west coast that directs you to kind of look at that. And so, yeah, there's not a lot of information on that trip either. It's basically silent as to when they launched and they sailed. There was a tempest, and then
you have to keep in mind Nephi is literally arrested by his brothers and kept underneath the ship for a significant length of the journey. So we don't get a lot of description of their journey across the ocean. We just don't.
Okay, now where did they land? From the Canary Islands. You showed us a map here, okay?
Yeah.
So from the Canary Islands, the trade winds are going down on the north equatorial current. So what, are you suggesting that they landed somewhere in Trinidad and Tobago, or what?
Pele.
I don't get it.
Okay. Well, this
actually, was he a Brazilian soccer player?
Exactly.
Oh, they speak Portuguese. Okay, I get what you're saying now. Bolsonaro's great-great-great-grandpa was a Jaredite, apparently. Okay.
Okay. So then I look at the currents, right, coming off the Canaries. If you do the calculations, then it does actually, using the average current, it meets the criteria given in the the ether where it says they were 344 days upon the water. Now that doesn't mean they didn't stop somewhere.
Oh, so when you said Pele, you were actually talking about Mount Pele.
Of course.
Oh, you see, I didn't know that. You didn't tell me that. Holy smoke, there's a map here?
It's a volcano. Don't you know?
Oh, of course, yes.
It is a volcano. It's a requirement. It has to be a volcano.
Okay.
And it was erupting during that time frame. So, because we know when the volcanoes erupted. So again, I'm, and it's kind of interesting. Again, you know, this is not hard science, but it's at a place where if you're going to get out of the North Equatorial Current and get into the Caribbean Current, that would have been a place where you needed some guidance navigation to do that on the open sea.
So you think a volcanic eruption of Mount Pele was the signal flare that helped them navigate out of the North Equatorial Current and into the Ghanaian Current or the Caribbean Current. Okay.
Right. And again, this is if you're talking about being led by a cloud, I'm saying if this is the interpretation, then it actually fits. So the other concept people have is that these boats are just floating around without any propulsion, right? But in order to steer a ship, you have to have propulsion, either oars or some sort of a sail. If they're driven before the winds, then yes, the boat itself could be pushed, I guess, if it had a high enough, elevation off the ocean. But also this concept that there was no ability to steer it. There was no sails. There was no anything. That's, again, something people have had, some artist rendition. But, and that was the other thing that you have to have is you have the currents going the right direction, right rate. As you can see, there's also Pico de Orizaba, another volcano there.
Okay.
And that's actually right where the Jaredite area, Olmec area, where we in Mesoamerica correlate the two. It was also erupting in that time frame. So then as we go to the next, and you can kind of show this one.
Okay.
This is your, we talked about the ocean current. These are the winds, hurricanes. Again, you had this horrible tempest pushing them. So it actually matches your hurricane pathways and the direction that they would push you. So you have the trade winds that push you that direction, which you kind of showed previously. You also have the tempest, which it talked about, pushing you in the right direction.
Wow, dude. All right. This is awesome. I'm digging. Keep going.
Okay. So, and the other geographic models have them coming, they don't necessarily use the Canary Islands, but they have them going up into Florida. I'm just saying it didn't go that way. They landed in Mesoamerica. One thing to talk about is the stones on the Canary Islands.
Because
16 stones.
You mentioned that there's ships sufficient for the brother of Jared to have constructed the barges, and it's interesting they use the term barges and not boats. But now you have to explain how in the Canary Islands you get the Great Mount Shelem, where the Lord touches the stones in order to give light. Yeah,
and so it talks about them being molten out of a rock.
Okay.
Right. He did molten the stones out of a rock. Now, it's not clear that the interpreter stones were, but he talks about the 16 stones because 2 went in each end of the barge, or 2 stones, 1 in each point of the barge.
Okay.
So it's not clear whether the actual interpreter stones were actually something that Brother Jared had to molten out of the rock. Now, the term actually, the original spelling is Moulton, which is a different meaning. It can actually just mean to heat and break. So it wasn't like he had to smelt them or something or molten them. He could have just heated rock and busted crystals out of it. out of the rock or something. Does that make sense?
Okay, yes.
From a scientific standpoint.
So molten, M-O-U-L-T-E-N, is not the same as molten, M-O-L-T-E-N.
Right.
In older versions of English that the Book of Mormon was probably translated in. One insinuates an industrial process of excessive heat.
Of melting it, right.
Of melting it, whereas one just insinuates a process of
well, for example,
normal
you could heat rocks in a bonfire of some sort, quench them real quickly, and they crack open. And so when it says molten it out of the rock, we don't necessarily have to imply that he was creating crystal stones out of the rock. He could have just, there were minerals with crystals in deposits.
Are there any kinds of special crystals in the Canary Islands that have a tendency to give off like radium light? Is this the original radium here? What's going on?
Well, that's a good question. I actually identified
cancer rates were high on that trip.
Yeah, exactly, for real.
There are. Let me put it this way. I think I didn't list them here, but there were something like 30 different minerals that are located on the Canary Islands that are translucent, that probably could have met that criteria, at least of being translucent and being sufficient to have light come out of them. Now, whether they could generate light, that's another question. There are a lot of ways that, I'm not saying that it all happened naturally. For example, one of the issues is the stones. People always, there's an artist rendering where it says the Lord touched the stones. It shows them lighting up there up on top of the mountain. Well, the text actually indicates that it didn't say that's what happened. It says that when they were in the boats, it was, though. They put them in each end of the boat. So from a technological, if you're just looking from a scientific standpoint, it's similar. The Lord could have prepared them in a way where they could generate light, like our shake flashlights, for example.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, maybe had something like that with the bow going up and down, shaking, and could generate light just from the kinetic activity. It doesn't necessarily have to be a luminescence. Just every time the stone, and that's why I suspect maybe they weren't lighting all the time, but I'm not saying they couldn't have.
I want my stones to glow.
Yeah, dude.
From the finger of the Lord.
Yeah, baby.
For me, this is one of and this is an area where it's
you don't have a leg to stand on because you're the guy that already rained on our parade about it being a submarine, dude. I had a submarine with glow sticks in it.
I still have glow sticks. I still have glow sticks.
Okay, cool. Awesome. All right.
My party's halfway there.
Yeah.
But I think people come to that conclusion. I think it's an interesting topic that you and I were talking about before the show, Jerry, is at what point are we looking for a naturalistic explanation? And at what point do we see the Lord's finger come in and say, okay, this is a miraculous moment, and I'm not looking for necessarily a naturalistic explanation. I think the eye's in the beholder there a little bit, but I think a lot of people's common interpretation on this is this was a miracle. The Lord lit up the stones. Just like a lot of people's common interpretation was, the brother of Jared questions, how shall we steer these ships?
How should we light the darkness?
How shall we light them up in dark? How shall we accomplish this? So there's a little bit here that I think is meant to prick faith, and are we necessarily looking for the right crystal on the right island? I don't know. I think it's a fascinating discussion, but at the end of the day, I kind of lean towards the miraculous on this one.
Yeah, why do you lack the faith to recognize the power of the glow stick, dog?
Well, that's why I'm on this podcast. It's to get crucified by all these guys.
Sorry.
All right, so wrap it up, my
friends.
Yeah, exactly. Brutal. So,
no, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is my research is, I'm not saying, I just look at everything and say, can I explain this naturalistically? I know that causes some people difficulty by they say, oh, you're just taking the miracle out of it. I'm not necessarily taking the miracle out of it. It was a miracle that they even crossed the ocean. But my research is kind of looking at this it's a bizarre track in a weird way because you have two camps. You have those that believe the Book of Mormon is actually, a miracle itself and a product of a visit of an angel and all these other things, right?
Sign me up.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then on the other side, you have the people that think it's fully naturalistic, right? It's just Joseph Smith writing it and looking. I'm actually kind of a different approach in the sense that I do believe the Book of Mormon has this historical record, right? And it's an ancient record, but I'm looking at it from looking at the events in it, not necessarily, how to explain what an angel was or anything, but I'm just saying, actually from a standpoint of looking at, because they operated in nature, they operated in the world, they were crossing an ocean of some sort.
How the Lord might have done this.
Yeah.
And explore that, which I love the exploration.
So for me, it actually builds faith in a strange way.
Yeah,
that I
100%.
actually, because I think sometimes it's helpful if we do figure out what happened from a naturalistic standpoint. To me, it makes it more real. I don't know if that makes sense. So I maybe my approach is maybe different from your Sunday school manual kind of approach here.
Well, so is your shirt, bro.
Yeah, well.
So is your shirt. That's super mezzo, my man. I'm digging. That's super mezzo.
Yeah, I'm not culturally appropriating anything because this is just a tourist T-shirt. But
okay, rock on. But that's funny. All right, so we wrap it up here. You got
real quickly.
Hit us.
One of the issues that critics raise is glass. Okay, because it talks about transparent as glass. So it doesn't mean
you got an answer for that, right, bro?
Well, no, I always bring up stuff that I don't have any answer to on this show. But so the question, it's not like they were making the stones out of glass, for example, but what they were apparently familiar with transparent glass. That's kind of an issue because back in that time frame,
we're pretty early right now.
Yeah, the glass that they could make wasn't really transparent. It was all colored. They didn't know how to make transparent glass. So the question is, how can that explanation really be
be an anachronism?
Yes, not be an anachronism. And so bring up this. I've got the slide up.
Okay, hit it.
So there was natural glass in the Canary Islands. So it could, but it wasn't necessarily transparent. So it could be a candidate. But there was transparent glass. These are called desert pearls. And what happens is you get lightning hitting sand, like in the Sahara. And so they knew about these translucent stones and collected them.
Wait, so could the hand of God kind of basically been a local term for lightning? The finger of the Lord was really just lightning, like.
Well, what I'm saying is the question is, how could they ever have seen transparent glass if nobody knew how to make it?
Yeah.
So that's the anachronism. I'm basically saying they actually occurred naturally. There was natural glass, transparent glass that occurred naturally. Lightning would strike sand like in the Sahara, and it would leave all these. It would, create glass. I mean, that's how you create glass is sand. Still now we make glass out of sand.
I saw the rom-com where the guy put rebar in the beach, and then waited for the lightning to hit it, and it would make like sand sculptures. And
so your pre-incarnate Jesus here in Ether is kind of like the Revelation 19 tattooed on the thigh Jesus. The victorious Jesus coming down and woolly hair on fire. Like, I like this card, and I like
dude, with glow sticks in barges, dude. It's freaking rad. Somebody is going to put that into AI, and we are going to get some really interesting fan art here in a minute, So, all right, keep going.
Basically, so I was basically saying tektites and Libyan desert glass, they're formed by meteoric impacts. Also fulgurites, those are the glass made when lightning strikes sand. So they get these brittle tubes in the sand.
Okay.
So it was known.
I like that a lot, Jerry. I think that's really intriguing. And boosts the Canary Island thought of plausibility, right? So,
right. And then you actually, you ask about how are they glowing. If you want to bring up this slide, it's not a picture, but these are all of the known natural forms of luminescence. That kind of spontaneous. So there's a bunch of different possibilities. I'm not saying that all of these were occurring with the stones, but there are ways that natural things will photoluminate, meaning that it doesn't require, intervention by God. Again, I'm here running into trouble with Josh.
No. This is a good discussion.
But I'm just saying.
I think all 16 were combined by the finger of the Lord, and then all of a sudden we were like, it was hopping.
Rock on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, I'm analyzing this, saying there are ways that stones can glow. The Lord maybe used one of these methods to create to have them do it. Or like I said, it could even be kinetic energy, like a shake flashlight or something. And then, I don't know that the interpreter stones may be obviously something different, right? Because they had they weren't just glowing, they had a capability of...
And they were provided.
Yes.
They were not something that the brother of Jared necessarily
stumbled
upon or like MOULT molted out. Like this is something he was given.
So. Right. And so what I'm saying is, yes, I'm looking at just the 16 from a natural. We don't know where the other two came. God maybe just had them, right?
Right.
I suppose he could have got them from the... I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But again, this is kind of just trying to gauge... I'm trying to apply science and say, yes, this is actually explainable, meaning we don't necessarily have to default to some unknown naturalistic occurrence. Again, it's not that God didn't do something. He said he prepared the stones, or he touched the stones and did something to them. So, but it may have been just simply using natural law as we know it, creating something in the stones that could luminesce, right?
Awesome. So, I'm digging. All right, keep going, man.
And
keep
witness descriptions of those two stones. I think Martin Harris provided descriptions of them, and there were others where they were like either white or crystal looking, like when we're talking about what is called today often the interpreters or the Urim and Thummim. Those two stones, that were actually used to translate the Book of Mormon later on that Joseph had. There's some comparison there, right?
Yeah. And I didn't really bring any pictures here, but part of the question too is even I'm looking at scientifically the interpreters themselves, like functionally, because they were put in these rims of silver. We know that silver will turn black over time or tarnish. So what metal was it? It was silver colored. The only metal that will meet that criteria is platinum, which the only place it was ever known to be anciently produced was in basically Central America, Colombia area. They mined it and produced it. So the spectacles themselves, because there's no spectacles mentioned in ether, right? It's just the stones.
Right.
So it seems pretty clear that the Nephites were the ones that mounted those stones in the spectacle, which then, as William described, there was a little bar that flipped up off the breastplate, and they mounted on that. And so they weren't like glasses like people were thinking. They sat some distance away and somehow were able to like maybe look at a character in one lens and then display the translation in the other. So yes, there was some technology, quote unquote, miraculous power of God, but obviously something, and they could do more than that because they said they could look in it and see the plates far away, kind of.
And I love Joseph's reaction to getting them. It's almost like when he gets the plates and gets the interpreters, he's more impressed, or not more impressed, it might be the wrong word. He's fascinated with the spectacles. The spectacles just intrigue him. He's never had anything like that before, and he's mesmerized by them in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we hardly ever talk about the spectacles, right? We always talk about the plates, the metallurgy of the plates, how many plates, but the spectacles themselves, at least from my standpoint, from metallurgical and looking at them from a naturalistic standpoint, are very intriguing, and actually maybe tell me more about the source of where the Nephites were and all that than the plates themselves.
And clearly a real artifact. I mean, you have Lucy describes them. She actually held them underneath just a very thin handkerchief. So there's a lot of, when it comes to witness statements, there's a lot of independent attestation for them when Joseph procures them from the stone box.
And kind of interesting story. I was friends with John Sorensen, and he's passed away a few years ago, but I used to regularly visit him, and he's older, but he even proposed, he says, just again, we're doing kind of the Book of Mormon egghead BSing session, kind of speculating, but he actually said, hey, maybe since God already knew what the Book of Mormon was going to be, maybe it's just it was programmed solid state into one of the, into the interpreter stone itself. So it just displayed what we knew the translation was already going to be.
Wow. All right. Never solid state, naturally occurring lightning sand from Mount Shellam in the Canary Islands spectacles. That's up there with submarines and glow sticks, dude. Like, this is awesome. That actually sounds like a punk band name from, like, the late 90s, early 2000s. Submarines and glow sticks. I'm going to trademark that.
So this is a little bit, like, again, we're not speculating totally, but it's...
Yeah, when we talk about evidence, we're talking about, is there no explanation? Is there some sort of possibility? Then we go to, like, plausibility, probability, likelihood, like this is weighed on a scale, and there's just not enough information within the text to go hard likely or hard, probable, but this puts it into a realm of possibility.
And what I did here, like on the pathway, right, it may be a little boring, but it's taking that description and saying, let's apply it in the real world. Is there a path that would get them where they need to go with the right currents and everything that meets all what's in the text, right? So they were led before a cloud. So it's like, okay, maybe there's volcano. So it does actually provide an explanation, a real world explanation for the travel of the Jaredites. Now, what the design of the boat was exactly, who knows? We don't know. But again, part of it also was to try to, as I grew up, I kept these submarines, I kept like, this is not what it's saying, So it was more or less I wrote this as part of my book. It's like, it is not submarines. That's not what the text is saying. It actually says the ship had bows, it had a sealed deck, just because the water would obviously, if they're going through a hurricane, it's going to wash over the top of the deck. The tempest is going to kind of bury them in the sea for, they drop down and come back up. And so it's kind of saying, listen, it's kind of I guess why create it as more unrealistic than it doesn't need to be that unrealistic. Right, what people they're telling a story that actually doesn't need to be told that way. The text doesn't require. They were
submarines and glow sticks, cope and seethe, submarines and glow sticks. Okay, anything else we got to say before we go, bro?
Yeah, I don't want you teaching primary anymore.
Yeah. I will literally bring... Oh, dude, on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
Hold on. You just reminded me of something really, really funny. In Facebook Marketplace, just this week, I was looking, I occasionally peruse the local classifieds, right? So anyway, on Facebook Marketplace, there was the absolute most, I'm going to still see if it's there. If you look up in the Los Angeles Facebook Marketplace, there was a submarine prop that somebody had made for some kind of, I don't know if it was Universal Studios. Oh, here it is. They were selling this submarine prop right here to the first bidder. Whoever wants to get it can get it. Look at that thing.
There it is.
And look, it is literally a rain gutter. If you look in closely, that's a fan blade top with a 50-gallon barrel drum. And look at this. The front, I swear, is a Ninja Turtles. A Ninja Turtles.
Oh, yeah.
I hope they aren't going to dive on the Titanic with that one.
Yeah, for real, dude, for real. So anyway, any last thoughts before we go? Jerry, hit us.
No, again, it was kind of an interesting thing that really, it's not part of any lessons in church or anything. It's just kind of people kind of come up with their own conclusions. But it was just, as we're anticipating doing additional podcasts on the Jaredites, seemed like a good place to start, saying here's the journey a likely journey. Some people argue they came through the Pacific, okay, but I think this better meets the text and the natural, environment that would be required to get them.
Final thoughts, Josh.
Yeah, it certainly meets an Atlantic crossing, certainly meets what we later find within the geography of the Book of Mormon in a real-world landscape. They're inhabiting right along the narrow neck on the East Coast. That certainly is something that is true in the text. So,
but this isn't the way that the Nephites and Lehites came over, is what you're saying?
No.
Okay,
Looks like they made a Pacific crossing, but
okay. Ooh, we'll have to get into that.
But it says they sailed. They were driven before the winds, but then after that, it says they sailed. So they had some capability of tacking, probably, that kind of thing. So they had much more ability to navigate than the Jaredites did. Sounds like.
Okay, awesome, great. Well, let us know what you guys think in the comments below. If you guys want to purchase a shirt, they are all available. Same with our War in Heaven hats for sale on wardradio.com. If you want to get a shirt, make sure you check out our merch there. And if you're a person of means that would like to help us out on the program, please consider a contribution through Zelle or through Venmo or the Cash App. And as always, for this and more, please make sure you check us out at wardradio.com.